Assignment 9, Part 1. In response to the quote by Ron Edmonds, we can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to do that. Whether or not we do it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. So there are two things that really stood out to me with this quote, to kind of go back to describing the biggest single obstacle in my opinion. The first part of it is the very end, how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. It kind of leaves you with this rhetorical self-evaluation and self-reflection, which kind of leads to my answer. In my opinion, I think that to successfully teach all children, the biggest single obstacle is going to be you yourself as the teacher. Teachers are the core of whether or not children are taught successfully, and I think success in the classroom is a very objective opinion on what that's going to look like, but according to what we've been reading there with the backwards planning and everything, there are certain steps that can be adapted in order to reach that level of success, and it's not requiring that teachers are necessarily just doing less and students are doing more, because we want it to be more student focused. But it's knowing how to actually reach those students. If you have taken the time to build those relationships with your students, then you're going to figure out how to actually reach them. So I guess if you have that genuine interest, which brings me to the second part of the quote that really stood out to me, was teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. I think that's going to show in the classroom. As teachers, you either have that passion or you don't, and it's going to show. Don't get me wrong, we all have days when we are tired in the classroom, but when you care about your students, when you genuinely care about your students, you're going to go, beyond what makes them just be in the classroom. You're going to figure out what it is to actually help them learn and make those connections and understand the material and have a true understanding of the material, not just memorizing the actual information. And we'll know that point of success in our students because we know our students, not because of what's shown on a test. As for part 2, after reading chapters 4 and 5 in Understanding by Design and thinking about my own experience as an actual learner, it kind of brought me back to, I guess I'll go with my most recent class. Last summer I took a couple of graduate courses, and one of them was using technology in the classroom. And that class to me really had a lot of meaning. There were assignments of just, like, how would you use this in the classroom, and how could you apply this to your own class and your own students. And I was interested in it because it had to do with technology, but going above and beyond like that, where it talks about, like, just going, like, getting caught up in the magic and joy of learning, I realized that I was putting more into those assignments because it was something I was genuinely interested in, and it was something that I was, like, self-reflecting with. So the two concepts that I took away from chapters 4 and 5 was the self-knowledge, the metacognition part of it, like, how am I using it? How am I using it in the classroom? How am I using it with my students? How can I change it? How can I improve upon it? And then, of course, the purpose, audience, and impact. So with that classroom, or with that class, a lot of my assignments, not totally realizing at the time, but thinking back on it, I'm realizing that the intent was very purposeful, and it was very authentic, because it was just, it was what we were doing. It was what I was doing at the time. I was trying to incorporate technology into my classes and figuring out different ways to actually use that. And so, like, one of the things that it says about the intention and purpose and audience in the book as goals must be robust in revealing inquiry, leading to deeper understanding and new questions. And that's exactly what that class did for me. It led me to think, what are some other ways I can figure out how to apply this into my classroom? How are some ways that my students are going to be able to use this? And so I think the metacognition, that self-knowledge part of the 6 facets of understanding, and then the purpose, audience, and impact, I think those two things together are something that I'm constantly going back to, and that's what helped me. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.